the recording going. Okay, we're still in the 7th week or 7th module, and we're actually plowing through it pretty well. Yesterday we did some things that were supposed to be actually done uh, today, but we've already accomplished them. So I took those few things, uh, like the organ systems and the, I'm sorry, I took the organs and systems in this handout and I changed their date because they're done. That would only bother you or concern you if you print these pages out. I don't know why you'd print the index out. Uh, so if you notice the date change and it's in the past, it's because we already got through there. Okay. The recording for last night is up, okay, the way we've always done it actually. Today we're going to talk about the autonomic nervous system, and we're going to review some organs and systems, some more of that. Okay. I've got some more PowerPoints for you for the tissues, but cruising down to the bottom of the page for whenever you feel ready for it. Okay. No dates, and you don't submit it. Here's a practice quiz on tissues. It'll have the answers embedded in it, so you'll know. And the practice quiz for the nervous system, which probably should wait until tomorrow because we haven't finished that yet. I've gone ahead and started working on next week, putting together what we might do. But for sure, we will do this. There'll be a practice quiz on the endocrine system after we have the lecture. You're welcome to go ahead and try it. You're welcome to go ahead and do it as many times as you want uh, to get it correct. There's also a practice final examination. You know the final is 50 questions. It'll be a week from tomorrow. Multiple choice, 2 points apiece. Okay, well, here's one version of it that I gave previously. Okay. And it's all text based. And so you can go ahead and take this practice final when you feel uh, your preparation is there. I wouldn't take it early. You take it early and don't do so well, it's discouraging. Okay, but when you feel that you can make use of it, it's going to be there, and the answers are in the next slot. Okay. Okay, here's where we are today, 721, autonomic nervous system, as opposed to the nervous system in general, which we talked about yesterday. Okay, uh, it is a good idea, and many of you are already getting in your chapters early. But chapter 12 really helps out with the autonomic nervous system. And the suggestion that you use it as you go through this material is, I think, a good one. Okay. The afferent nervous system, that's the incoming. So we have stimuli. That stimulus can come from the skin, can come from the head, the legs, the arms. A lot of people, though, overlook one other place where incoming information can be found. Incoming meaning going to the central nervous system. Where else do you think that is? Where do you think you could get more incoming information than the things I just mentioned? Pain, heat, pressure from the skin, for instance.
Maybe your senses?
You're close. You're close, but that's not what we're looking at.
Eyeballs?
No.
I think there were two words overlapping each other. I didn't get it. Sorry. Want to say it again?
I was guessing the eyes.
Okay, the eyes. How about the internal organs? Ever get a stomach ache? Sure. That's just, you know. Ever get cramps? Sure. Ever get painful feelings uh, from your internal organs? Yeah. Okay, that's not coming from the outside. Okay, that's called visceral sensory uh, stimulation that you're getting. What you get from the skin and from the outside is somatic sensory of the body. Okay, somatic and visceral. We can sort of jump down to the chart below and see the two. Somatic is just general touch, pain, pressure, vibration, temperature, all those things that you learn to recognize. Sometimes you block off the pain that you have internally, or sometimes there isn't pain, but there is sensation sent to the central nervous system from your organs, and that is visceral sensory. If it's not pain, what could it be? It could be telling what the pH is. It could be telling what the blood pressure going through the kidneys are or is. Okay, there's a lot of things that we perceive, and they don't all have to be pain. Pain, of course, is one of the best examples, though. Okay, and those two would combine this incoming information into the afferent nervous system, or the sensory division of the nervous system. And from there, one thing I don't like about the chart, okay, never found a great one. They have it going to the peripheral nervous system. It's already in the peripheral nervous system. The chart really doesn't need to tell us that. Is this a tan color in here? Help me out, please.
Yes, in the box.
Yes.
Okay, the tan color is the peripheral nervous system. So this is peripheral nervous system right here, and this is the afferent or incoming, and we could draw it straight to the central nervous system, which is sort of the faded out uh, uh, member here. And then going the opposite way would be the motor division, or the efferent nervous system. We have the in and out. We have stimuli or alerts or alarms, and then we have the reaction. Sometimes there is no reaction, but when we have a reaction, it'll go out through the motor division, which we call the efferent nervous system, right here. Okay. When stimuli are initiated by the central nervous system and they leave through the motor division or efferent nervous system, they quickly are divided up and either go through pathways of the voluntary nervous system or the involuntary nervous system. Here's where they split right here. The somatic nervous system is the voluntary nervous system, and the voluntary nervous system is the innervation of skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle. And of course, that's what we think of most. We think of, well, we got problem here, better run away, better hide, better crouch down, better move this, better move that. Okay, motion. And that's going to be done by the skeletal muscles, and that's going to be done by the voluntary nervous system. But your internal organs are going to make adjustments also. If you're in a situation, for instance, where you need to defend yourself or to hide again or to run away, you're not in a situation where you need to continue the digestion of a McDonald's hamburger. And if that's in your stomach or something like that, okay, the autonomic nervous system may be activated and tell the stomach to lay low, do nothing. And the autonomic nervous system goes out to every organ in the body. Okay? Every organ in the body is told, you're doing fine, you need to step up, or you can taper off. Okay? This happens all day long without
Charlie,
our knowing it. Yeah.
do we need to know autonomic nervous system as the visceral nervous system as well? In the book, they have it as visceral.
Where do you have visceral?
In the book, it has visceral motor, also called the autonomic nervous system.
Okay, it is the autonomic nervous system, and that's the preferred uh, abbreviation, preferred name.
So
Okay.
you're not going to use it any other way. Okay.
Well, I may use it as ANS, autonomic
visceral.
nervous system. But I pretty well spell it out for you the way I give it to you. If
Okay.
I give it to you two ways, I feel, okay, I can do it either way. If you find a way in the book that I haven't used, well, you're not going to see it on the test.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, good. That's very helpful, actually, when you ask things like that, when anybody does, because the other students may have had the same question, may not yet have thought of that question, and they think of it the night before the test, and then I start getting all these emails. Oh, God. Okay. The autonomic nervous system, the control over our internal organs primarily. Okay. The autonomic nervous system innervates three things: smooth muscle, and all organs have smooth muscle; cardiac muscle, well, that's just the heart; and the glands. Okay. And I have said glandular epithelium. Well, glands are composed of glandular epithelium, so it makes sense. So the motor autonomic information, the efferent, use the term here, efferent autonomic nervous system information is also split into two divisions: the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Well, think of a muscle, and we'll go to the voluntary nervous system for just a second. And I always use the easiest example here. If you flex the biceps, you'll raise your forearm. Okay. Now, to unflex your biceps, rather than use gravity by just bending over and letting it fall, if you want to go the other direction, you'll use your triceps. Okay, so you have an antagonistic pair of muscles that together can perform an action, a continuous action, like lifting weights. Okay, curling weights up and down, up and down. Okay. However, in the rest of the body, these things like the stomach, there's no skeletal muscle. There's smooth muscle. Okay. The heart has no skeletal muscle. It has cardiac muscle. And so you need a system that makes it work or work harder, and a system that tells it to back off. Okay. It doesn't quite work that you have an on switch, and when you release the on switch, it just goes back. It's got to be taken back. You actually have to push the switch down. Okay. And so we have two subdivisions. One is the sympathetic system. The sympathetic system is the one we say is responsible for priming the body for fight or flight. So in trying to get away from a dangerous situation, the sympathetic nervous system primes the organs of the body to do just that. It gets the adrenal gland going. Okay? And the adrenal gland, of course, gets everything else going. When you don't need that, the sympathetic system may be sort of at a idling pace. Okay, it's always working. It's always working, but you're not agitated all of the time. And when you're not agitated, but working, your body's working and digesting and absorbing water in the colon and taking up uh, digested food to the hepatic portal vein, all that normal stuff. That's basically the parameter of the parasympathetic nervous system. Now they have the words parasympathetic division and sympathetic division. I usually write the whole thing out. Sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. And that never will confuse anybody because of the word sympathetic or parasympathetic that is in there. Okay. These are both working at all times. It's just to what intensity is one working compared to the other. The sympathetic division is better thought of, as I said a moment ago, fight or flight. Have you ever had the situation where, oh, it could be any type of thing, but it could be just somebody scaring you, coming up from behind you, or you're looking up from your cell phone. I hope not. And there's a car right in front of you, and you are going to slam. You're going to just slam that car. Okay, hopefully it's not a person. But what happens? Your body just tenses up immediately, and so you actually can uh, uh, enrage, in charge, or charge up your entire body through the sympathetic division, and you'll see how exactly we do that in just a moment. The way it's set up, it runs through the entire body, and a signal sent out by any part of the body can initiate this fight or flight syndrome. Okay, I counted them earlier. There are 5 pages in this, and we just finished one, and we took the longest on it. We're talking now about the autonomic nervous system. We're talking about the neurons of the autonomic nervous system that leave the central nervous system. They're leaving with information, whether it's going to be sympathetic or parasympathetic. Okay, the autonomic nervous system is leaving with information, and it's going to go to an organ. Every organ gets its fair share of innervation. How many neurons do you think it takes to go from the spinal cord to the stomach? Just like yesterday, it takes two.
2.
Yep, that's it. Okay. From the spinal cord to the colon, two. Okay. It takes two neurons, one after another. One starts off embedded in the spinal cord. Okay. And then it emerges from the spinal cord, and that would be through the ventral root. Sort of pressing you here to think back to that picture or model we had of the vertebra. But the first neuron comes out, and now it's going to meet the second neuron in the chain. And where they meet is called a synapse. Okay, so if we look down at this bottom picture, here's the cell body. This is embedded in the spinal cord. Here's the long axon. The axon potential is the impulse going down. It can be split into many axon branches or teleodendria that we talked about yesterday. And each teleodendrion can synapse with a dendrite. So we can get many synapses here. And when it does synapse with the dendrite, this impulse collectively gathers at the axon hillock right here. And when there's enough, this second one fires. Well, trust me, the second neuron is not waiting around forever. If the first neuron is firing, it's usually going to be firing enough to set off the charge in the second neuron. And this one goes, and it ends not at a synapse, but at a myo-neuro-junction. Myo meaning muscular, neuro meaning nervous system. It's where the nervous system and the smooth muscle of an organ come together. So the end of this two neuron chain is always a myo-neuro junction. In between the two neurons is a synapse. The first of the two neurons, the one that's coming from the brain or the spinal cord, is called several things, actually, unfortunately. Presynaptic neuron. Here it's presynaptic cell. Okay. Sending cell, I don't use that term. Okay. This is the also preganglionic neuron. Hang on to that idea for a moment. The second neuron is the postganglionic neuron. It can also be called postsynaptic because it comes after the synapse. But we don't have just one little pathway here running to the stomach in this case. While you walk, jog, jump rope, whatever you do, and break these guys throughout your life. We have hundreds of thousands of these pairs together, and we call it a nerve. Okay. Neurons won't work just by themselves. They've got to have company, got to have lots of neurons running parallel, and that saves us. Okay. And these neurons running together like that in multiple numbers are called a nerve. That means right here we have a little synapse, but if you can imagine another set of two lining up right here, we have another synapse and we have another cell body. And when we got hundreds, thousands of these pathways running parallel to each other, we've got hundreds and thousands of these synapses and neural cell bodies coming together at the same point. That's the knot I talked to you about yesterday. That's the knot. And what happens is you're going to get a bump here. It doesn't have to be very large. You might even need a microscope to see it, but it can be quite large also. And when it is large, it's called a ganglion. That's why this neuron is the preganglionic neuron, and this is the postganglionic neuron. Okay. The ganglion itself is immense. compared to one neuron. If you look at your definitions that I gave you yesterday, there's a definition for a ganglion. That's a cluster of neurocell bodies in the peripheral nervous system. Okay, we're out in the periphery here. This is the peripheral nervous system. This is the peripheral nervous system here, but the part that's embedded in the spinal cord, what's that? It's also peripheral nervous system. It just happens to be embedded inside of the central nervous system. It's like sticking your finger in a cake. Your finger is not cake. Okay? The cake moves aside, and you have, in this case, a parakaryon, a neural cell body embedded inside of the gray matter of the spinal cord. Okay, now the synapse is where one neuron meets another. There is a physical gap at the synapse. That slows things down because the electrical charge or impulse or the action potential, as it's called here, isn't going to transfer across that. We've got to have a way to get across that gap. It's a chemical method, which I'll show you in just a second, but it slows things down a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. Now, if you have lots and lots of neurons in this chain of two that we have, instead, if you have 40 neurons, you're going to have 40 synapses, and you're going to have 40 slowdowns. It's almost like a stoplight. How would you like to go down a street with 40 stoplights? Well, if you can get them timed, so much the better for you, but I don't seem to be able to do that. So by only having one stoplight here, then the impulse is propagated forward and goes to the myoneurojunction. This represents a possible version of a synapse here. The darker portion of this neuron, this is the end of a neuron. The impulse is coming from left to right. This is still considered a part of the axon. It's not necessary to recognize the mitochondria. All cells have those. Okay. But we do notice at the end of the axon branch. This is an axon branch. This is a teleodendrium. Okay. Inside of those, ready to go when needed, are vesicles. These are called synaptic vesicles. It's not listed on the page, but it's the idea that counts here. These contain chemicals called neurotransmitters. Basically, the neurotransmitters are acetylcholine or noradrenaline. I'll have them in writing for you in just a second. When the impulse comes, it causes the synaptic vesicle to blend or bind with the outer membrane at the end of the axon terminal. And that's what's happened here. And the chemicals inside are expelled. Expelled is an active word, so I don't think that's the proper word here. They're released, okay? And the neurotransmitters go across. How do they get across? They get across by diffusion. Now, you know, diffusion is not the fastest process. It's not even facilitated diffusion. It's just diffusion, but it's only a short distance. And when the neurotransmitter, these little dots, get across to the other side, they're received by the dendrite of the second neuron. This is the preganglionic neuron. This is the postganglionic neuron. Both of them are needed to perform this function. And that function is to take a motor impulse from the central nervous system out to an internal organ. Here's the dendrite, and we don't see the rest of it. It's just the synapse itself. This is just to illustrate a ganglion. This picture down here. You recognize it, I'm sure, as the spinal cord. This is the spinal nerve. It's labeled over here. And we'll be talking about spinal nerves tomorrow. Dedicate the day to spinal nerves. And the incoming information, the afferent information, comes in here by pseudo unipolar neurons. Okay. And they have their cell bodies right about here. And since it's not just one neuron or one neuron set, but hundreds coming in as nerves, you get a big cluster of these cell bodies causing a swelling. And that swelling is the dorsal root ganglion. Then continuing on.
Hey, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Did you say that the only neurons in the dorsal root ganglion are pseudo, we called them
Pseudo unipolar.
pseudo, so those are the only ones there?
No, 99% would be. Okay. For the purposes of what we're illustrating here, talking about, they're the only ones that matter. I can't say that they're the only ones there. If you get a whole bunch of your friends at a party, is there a chance that somebody gets into the party that you don't want? Sure. Okay, so I probably should have answered you with a lie. I should have probably told you they're the only ones there.
And then
If you
the follow-up question, are pseudo unipolar neurons the only ones at ganglions period, or just the specific ganglion?
just this specific ganglion here,
Okay.
and other ganglia, but not every ganglion. No, not every ganglion. These
Thank
are
you.
always from sensory neurons coming in from the skin. Okay. So that information proceeds on. The other portion of this neuron through the dorsal root. And now it gets inside of the gray matter. The gray matter here, this is the dorsal horn. It can go from there straight up or down, but if it goes straight up, it's going to go to the brain. Brain's going to think about it, decide to do something or not to do something, and send information back down, maybe to the same level. And when I say level, the level that this vertebra was taken from. You could also send it the information down to all of the vertebrae and said, hey, vertebra 5, number 5, has found out something very important to all of us. Get busy, all of you. Okay. And you can also have it go straight across and out. This would be a reflex arc. Okay. I didn't want to dwell on the reflex arc so much. I wanted to be sure that you realized that the neurons and the stimulus can travel to the brain and then through the motor system the autonomic nervous system, come back downward. And I wanted to explain this phenomena that we saw in that model, the dorsal root ganglion. The sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, is also known as the thoracolumbar system. Now, that's not going to be hard. And that's called the thoracolumbar because all of the preganglionic neurons, that's the first ones coming out. They arise in and emerge from the thoracic and lumbar vertebra only. I have a diagram for you in just a second. The parasympathetic neurons, the preganglionic and the postganglionic both, they arise from the brain and the sacrum. The parasympathetic nervous system then is also known as the cranio or cranial, either way, sacral system. All of the preganglionic neurons originate in the sacrum or the brain. Okay, we have two systems here in the involuntary nervous system, which is that other name that you asked me about for the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic system is also called the thoracolumbar. Okay. That's because the nerves originate from the spinal cord in the thoracic and lumbar regions. These nerves, these neurons, the sympathetic neurons, the parasympathetic neurons, they can't stay inside of the spinal cord. They got to get out into the peripheral parts of the body to have any function. All of the organs are peripheral. All the skin is peripheral. It's just that the preganglionic neurons in both systems start inside of the spinal cord. So the sympathetic system you need to know is called the thoracolumbar, and I still have a better diagram for you. And the parasympathetic system is the craniosacral system. The sympathetic system, we're comparing and contrasting here, obviously. It generally excites and prepares the body for fight or flight. Both systems, though, are active at all times. The parasympathetic system, by contrast, dominates in less tense situations. And both systems, again, are active at all times.
Charlie, can you give me like I know you probably already did, but like an example of a less tense situation? I get the fight or flight on the sympathetic side, but
Yeah, I'll give you a less tense situation. When you finally get to sleep the night before the exam, that's less tense. When you get to taking the exam, you may be more tense. That's tense. I don't know how you react to examinations, but I know for me, I am one of those that gets super, super tense. And I can almost explode. And then when the exam starts and I see I've overstudied, I can hardly stay awake. Okay. So it goes back and forth. Less tense situation. Okay. Doesn't have to be human. A cow grazing in the meadow. That's very less tense. Okay. Or a bull grazing in the meadow. But you enter into the meadow, jump the fence, and the bull comes charging at you. That's more tense. Okay. Anyway, if anybody else wants to give an example, chime in. These,
Charlie,
yes.
to your point, I actually pass out when I get blood tests because I get so nervous before that the letdown decreases my blood pressure so much that I pass out almost every time I get a blood test.
Oh, God. And how many blood tests have you had? Hundreds, huh? Probably.
Hundreds, and I'm not as bad now because when I was pregnant, I had to get blood tests all the time. So now I like know I have to lay down and look away, but just a weird, I guess, sympathetic nervous reaction that I have.
Huh. People are different. For me, one of the most relaxing places is in the dentist chair. Love it, love it. Puts me to sleep almost. They wake me up from a root canal or during a root canal, say, "You okay? You okay?" And yeah, let me go to sleep. You know, for some reason, dental pain, uh, I like it. I know it's crazy, but I'm glad I like it because I can relax in the dentist chair. I can also relax on an airplane. You know, they're getting ready to take off and everything. And I think the main reason I can relax is I don't have any control. It's not up to me. Live or die doesn't make any difference. I'm not responsible. So, okay.
Marley, I have a question.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long does the flight or fight response usually last? Like, I know different situations are different, but is there like a specific kind of like time limit where it exists?
I can only answer from my experience, and there is a limit because obviously we don't stay nervous forever, you know. But there have been times when I've gotten so agitated or frightened, okay, that you can't stop shaking. You just can't stop shaking. Why? Because you secreted so much adrenaline into your body. That's got to be worn off. And then when that's gone and no new adrenaline is being released, then you should be able to calm down. But there's no specific range.
Thank you.
Okay, now these two that I'm going to finish off this chart with may be a little bit difficult to understand until you see a picture that follows. So, in the sympathetic system, the fight or flight system, we know that is a chain of two neurons, the preganglionic neuron and the postganglionic neuron. And we also know that they don't travel alone. They travel with hundreds or thousands of other neurons to make a nerve. But now, for just a second, think of only the two neuron pathway. The preganglionic neuron in the sympathetic system is short. It terminates in what we call the chain ganglia. I showed you those on the vertebra, and I called them the sympathetic trunk ganglia. Both terms are correct. The preganglionic neuron runs from the spinal cord, comes out the ventral root, enters into one of these chain ganglia, and that's where it stops. That's where it's going to meet up with the second neuron. The postganglionic neuron that it does meet up with at a synapse is comparatively long. Does it have to be? Can't answer that. Is it? Yes. Always anatomically, when we look at these things, especially with a microscope, we can see that the preganglionic neuron in the sympathetic system is shorter by comparison than the postganglionic neuron. But the opposite is the case in the parasympathetic system. In the parasympathetic system, the preganglionic neuron is the long one, and it may terminate at a ganglion near the organ innervated, not in these chain ganglia. It will never get into these chain ganglia. I say it now, it doesn't mean much to you now. By tomorrow, it will mean everything. The sympathetic system is an adrenergic system. Adrenergic refers to what type of neurotransmitter is at the synapse and what type of neurotransmitter is at the myo-neurojunction. What type of neurotransmitter is at the end of the preganglionic neuron, and what type of neurotransmitter is at the end of the postganglionic neuron at the myo-neurojunction. This system is adrenergic because one of the neurotransmitters is adrenaline. We sort of expect that. I mean, adrenaline to most people brings up ideas of heightened activity, fear, okay, running. And so we need something to stimulate us. And it'll be the adrenaline that's in this system. Whereas in the parasympathetic system, at the synapse and at the myo-neurojunction, the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. And that is a slow one. That's a slow one. The system is entirely cholinergic. This will make more sense in a moment. You have to bear with me. Okay. Adrenergic, cholinergic. Okay. Here we've got a brain, very small brain, and spinal cord. These dots on the spinal cord itself or in the brain and down at the lowest part of the spinal cord are indicators of where the preganglionic neuron emerges. In the sympathetic system, the fight or flight system, the preganglionic neurons emerge from the lumbar and the thoracic region, from here down to here. That's why this is called the thoracolumbar system, as well as the sympathetic nervous system, thoracolumbar. Let's take out one that goes on its own. Okay, here's a preganglionic neuron. It's come out. Now, what did it come through? It came through the spinal cord. It came through the vertebra, not by drilling a hole in the bone, but by going under and over. In other words, between vertebra, goes out. And here's our preganglionic neuron, and its synapse is here. Okay, we've got a dot here. It's enlarged to indicate we have a lot of ganglia here, or this is in fact a ganglion. We have a lot of neural cell bodies. This is a chain ganglia. It's called the sympathetic chain, which you can see here. It runs down either side of your back, and of course, in this diagram, the other side is reserved for the other system, so you don't see it, but it's there. And from there, from the chain ganglia, we have a synapse with the post ganglionic neuron, and it runs a longer distance out to the organs of the body, in this case, to the lung. In this case, a long distance out to the salivary gland. In this one case, a shorter distance, but still longer, but shorter than the other two because the eye is closer. Now, the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight. We don't need to send out a signal, preganglionic, postganglionic, to the eye that says, get busy, run, get away. I can't do that. I can't do that. But signals sent out by the thoracolumbar vertebra can, in fact, end up at the chain ganglia. They always do. But instead of going straight across, like to the stomach, they can go up or down and then out. So any one of these can actually split into the many neurons that compose it, because it's a nerve, and excite the whole damn body. That's an amazing thing. Usually one would not get just one preganglionic neuron firing on its own. You'll get a set. They'll fire, and if need be, to stimulate the body, they will make their way north and south and then out to the organs and get everything going at once. Completely take over the situation. On the other side, the side where it's less active, okay, but still obviously important, very important. You have preganglionic neurons originating from the brain, okay, instead of the spinal cord. And these can be long, taking this one to the liver. Here's the synapse, and then a short post-ganglionic neuron before the myoneuro junction. To the large intestine, the preganglionic and the small postganglionic neuron. They're almost right there on top of the organ. We also have in the parasympathetic system cranial and sacral origins from the sacrum here and here. These are going to the scrotum. This one, long and short, is going to the bladder. Now, when you look at this, when you review, mark it off with this if you can. You still have to account for this last one. In the sympathetic system, there are two neurons going from the brain to the organ. The first is short. Okay. This is to show a myelinated neuron. That's what's going on here. This is the cell body. We don't draw the dendrites in. Here we have at the other end the axon branches. Okay, and then we have the second neuron, the postganglionic neuron, which is long in the sympathetic system. Here's a synapse. The neurotransmitter at the sympathetic synapse, okay, this is the ganglion, is acetylcholine. It's the slow one. But then when you get to the end of the postganglionic neuron and meet the organ, it's traversed, the space is traversed by noradrenaline. Some books will say adrenaline. others noradrenaline, either is fine. In the sympathetic system, you have a long preganglionic neuron, and then it has a synapse where the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. And the postganglionic neuron, where the synapse at the organ is again acetylcholine. This is entirely cholinergic. This is entirely slower. This one is said to be adrenergic and is considerably faster. I've reproduced the cranial nerves for you. I gave them to you yesterday, but this is the same information. There'll be 5 cranial nerve questions on our L3 test. L3 is on Wednesday of next week. I'll be sending out information for times. Don't expect any big changes on times. 5 questions, and what I want you to do is go ahead and limit yourself to the Roman numerals, just like I said yesterday, and the names. And the names. Some people make up slogans. They use the O, and make words that make some sort of usually squirrely sentence, sometimes obscene. I don't remember any of them anymore anyway, but they're fun to hear. Okay, any questions? I know I went through it slow enough for you.
I have a question.
Yes,
Is norepinephrine the same thing as adrenaline?
yes.
Thank
By yes, I mean in effect. Its effect on the body is almost totally identical. They are not chemically the same thing, but as far as their ability to elicit responses, we consider them the same.
So does the sympathetic,
Lost you.
does the sympathetic nervous system use both?
The sympathetic nervous system uses both.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Like I was saying, I know I went through it slow enough that I feel that you had ample time to let it sink in right now. But you're going to be on your own when you review. So if you find there's something you still really don't get, write it down so that you can bring it and ask. Okay. And we'll go on to our laboratory as soon as I give you a break. It's 4 or 5. Let me just give you a break, if you don't mind, until 15 after. Okay? Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Okay, anybody with a question? If somebody will at least say no, I'll know I can hear you.
No.
Charlie.
Okay.
Not me.
Now, when I come in here, there's no way I can tell if we're all together or not, so I have to ask. Okay. Thank God we got rid of that doorbell. That was driving me nuts. And so far today, my phone hasn't rung. Okay, you got no questions, and we'll just get back to it. Okay, we're looking at the 7th week here. You are seeing it, I'm assuming. I thought the first thing I would do today, we just did the autonomic nervous system, and I wanted to do a little bit of review with some pictures that are better and some information that's a little bit more. Okay, so I've put this in. Okay, the dates, they don't matter. I try to get rid of them. I've learned never to date anything, but this was from last Christmas. Okay, this is a slide you saw yesterday. This was the neuron slide, and it has the glial cells surrounding them. Okay, so I think that was pretty good. I put a comment under every one of these slides though. Good detail of dendrites, here, and axon cylinder here, and the smaller dots are glial cells. Here's a much better picture of salivary gland than the one I showed you the other day. How do you know that this is a gland, much less a salivary gland? You know it's a gland because it has lobes. All glands have lobes. And this slice or microscopic slice has lobes. You see them here. It's almost like the marbling of meat at the supermarket. You may say, well, how do you know that's just not a line? How do you know it goes around and under or over above the slide? Because it is not possible to cut a thin line right through its diameter. In other words, you do not throw a hair into the air and cut it in half lengthwise with a sword. You've seen that in cartoons and things. That won't happen. When you get these long lines like this, they're not even going to be blood vessels. The blood vessels will dip and rise and be out of sight in no time. When these things are continuous, these are lobes. And lobes are glands, and glands are glandular epithelium. Now, there are some things that are pretty easy, like that neuron above, to identify, and others, a couple, that you'll have trouble with individually. Something gives you trouble, maybe it doesn't give anybody else trouble, but you're the one that counts. So you're going to have to figure out a way to memorize a few problem children here. And for me, when I can't identify one right off the bat, I just remember it as, that's that damn slide I can't remember. Oh, and then I remember. Okay. This is American gland, since it is a salivary gland. The darkest cells are the acinar cells, the ones that produce the enzymes. Acinar cells are never endocrine cells. Endocrine cells produce hormones. Here's our tongue again with the taste buds. You're expected only to identify it and name the taste buds. Here's the esophagus lining that we looked at. The upper portion shown here has an inner lining of stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified, definitely, many layers. Squamous, are the outside layers flat? Are they bulging? Are they oblong? Flat would be the best answer here, here, here. So stratified squamous epithelium. We're not going to have that in too many places. We're going to have it in the epidermis of the skin, and we're going to have it in the upper esophagus. This was that stomach slide, but to it I added a little bit of verbiage. The lumen, barely visible at the top to remind you that it's up here. The epithelium is simple columnar, even though you can't see it well at this magnification. If you know its stomach, you know its GI tract, you know that it's lined by simple columnar from the lower esophagus to the end. There are no villi here. The villi do not occur in the stomach, only in the small intestine. Here's the shot I showed you yesterday of the large intestine with some comments. Now the epithelial lining is again simple columnar, no villi. These are called intestinal crypts. Crypts sunk downward. These are not villi protruding upward. Okay. You have this going downward and gives the same appearance, however. The goblet cells that you see here, the light color cells secrete mucus to help move the contents along. Function of the colon, reabsorption of water, compaction of waste. The goblet cells, actually, you'll find a few of them in the stomach, these clear cells. You'll find more of them in the small intestine, and the most you'll ever see are in the colon. This is the pancreas. Now, first off, you know that this is a gland. I just showed you how. Long, straight lines, long lines, not possible to split a hair. So these are lobes. Okay. And so this is a gland. That's glandular epithelium. So which gland? Well, you can do it by elimination, or you can just look for the light spots in here, especially here. These are the islets of Langerhans. Okay, there are ducts in the pancreas because the pancreas is also an exocrine gland secreting pancreatic amylase. The pancreatic amylase is produced by the darker cells here, which are the acinar cells again. The hormonal function is from the alpha and beta cells in the islet, or if you want to use the full term, islet of Langerhans. Here's our liver, but this time I've labeled the central vein for you. And I've labeled the one good triad in this particular picture.
Charlie,
Yeah.
are all these images going to be on the practicum?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I would be wasting your time showing them to you otherwise. Okay.
I have a question, Charlie.
Sure.
So I noticed like some of the pictures on the practicum, I didn't recognize from the lecture. Do you use the same pictures or are they like, do they vary? Because sometimes it's hard for me to like identify.
Okay, what practicum are you talking about?
I don't remember exactly which one. I remember seeing pictures and not like recognizing that picture and trying to kind of like, I think it was maybe the tissues or something like that. And maybe I just didn't study them well enough, but I didn't recognize the pictures. They like looked a little bit different. It was hard for me to identify.
Okay, what I'm trying to get at is based upon what you said. You said some of the pictures didn't look like the ones on the practicum. Have you seen a practicum? Whether I don't care if you have or not. I'm going to show you one. But have you seen a practicum from a previous class, for instance, or anything? Because I don't know which ones we're talking about. I'm feeling that I'm showing you everything that's going to be on the test.
Got it. Okay. Maybe it's just, it probably was just, there are so many of them. I didn't recognize them, didn't like study them right well enough.
Charlie?
Just a
I
second.
think
Let me finish. Wait a minute. When you go through them again at some point, write down where they are. Okay.
Okay.
And we can go over them. Yeah. Now,
Charlie, I don't know if I'm correct here, but I think Allison was probably referring to how there's some images that weren't shown on like the lecture modules, but instead they were like from your Charlie, like, you know, the Charlie's website thing.
yeah,
I
I'm
think
going to show you those today too. Okay. That could be a PowerPoint. Yes, that could be a place. But if I show them to you, they're going to be on the test. I mean, it's as simple as that. Okay. You shouldn't have any trouble with this one from yesterday. The eye, here's the choroid coat, the retina, the sclera. And if I wanted to ask what this would be the posterior chamber or cavity. I'd take either. It's a multiple choice test. Here's the lung. And a little bit of writing this time that you didn't have yesterday, referring to the fact that the lung has several different types of tissues actually, but the one that we're most interested in is the thinnest, which is the simple squamous epithelium, which would be like this piece right here, here, here. Most of the walls. Here's the epidermis. You saw this yesterday. Stratum corneum up here. Then 4 layers more, ending with the stratum basal. I would not ask you the 4 layers here because you can't distinguish easily enough anyway, where one starts and one ends. However, I will ask you all 5 layers of the epidermis on the text quiz. The text quiz or text test would be the one on Wednesday, and that's L3. Don't forget the dermis down here, dense irregular connective tissue. The epidermis, stratified squamous. And here's skin. And this is showing some fat, sebaceous glands, and the sudoriferous glands throughout here. This is a nice pseudoreferous gland, actually over here. You have to ask yourself a couple of questions over and over. The sebaceous is a holocrine gland. Ask questions, give yourself your answer. The pseudoreferous gland is a merocrine gland. It secretes sweat. It secretes fluid. The sebaceous gland secretes sebum. It secretes whole cells in a fluid. That's why we call it holocrine. Here's the ovary that we looked at yesterday. It's a cat ovary because it does fit on the slide. Here's the ovum itself, and here's the follicle. Ovary is a reproductive organ and an endocrine gland. It's an endocrine gland because it secretes two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, both of which counteract the effect of another hormone that we'll study on Monday, the follicle stimulating hormone. You have not seen this one yet, and so here it is for the first time. It's in our lecture material for today, and this is a model of an ovary. Well, we see this, and what can we recognize immediately? We can recognize a mature follicle. This is usually called a Graafian follicle, or just a mature follicle. This is an erupting egg or ovum. Once the egg erupts through, the follicle erupted just deflates. So that's over here. And it becomes this yellow structure. So we're skipping around. This is the corpus lucidum. There are pieces of corpus lucidum here and over here. Those are not small corpus lucidum. That's just the fact that it's buried deeper. You only see the top. This is a full one, corpus lucidum. The corpus lucidum produces progesterone, and the progesterone goes to the brain. It's a hormone, and counteracts follicle stimulating hormone. Follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, produced by the pituitary, is released and initiates ovulation, the maturation of a follicle and the release of an ovum. If pregnancy results, then the corpus lucidum constantly produces the progesterone, which goes back to the follicle stimulating hormone in the pituitary and says, stop. Stop trying to make more follicles. We've got development going on. We've got a pregnancy. And so it does stop. If the pregnancy doesn't happen, then the progesterone won't be produced. If the pregnancy terminates or goes to term and ends, then we don't have any more progesterone. And then the FSH is free to be developed again and start the cycle over for the next round of offspring. At some point, the corpus luteum or corpus lucidum is going to give out. It's finished with. And when it does, it becomes a corpus albicans. The corpus albicans is scar tissue. We all have scar tissue within us. You have material in your kidneys that won't come out, hopefully. Otherwise, you might have yourself a kidney stone. and it's just going to stay there all your life. When I was a kid, I used to search the neighborhood for sour grass. Did you ever try sour grass? You eat the stems. Oh, it's wonderful stuff. I used to find it, and then I'd charge kids some money, not very much, to tell them where it was. And they'd go and get it. And sometimes I would just pick it myself and sell it.
How would you know what it looked like?
It's oxalis, actually. Nothing else looked like it, with a small yellow flower. It's just that it grows in strange places, and you really had to search for it. Trouble is, I didn't know this. Oxalic acid is not removable once it gets into your kidneys. So all these kids I contaminated, and me. Okay, that's what you have to know here, and most of it is written down below for you. You saw the seminiferous tubules yesterday, and this is in the testes. It's a endocrine organ producing testosterone as well as being a reproductive structure. Okay, this is for tomorrow. This I may do in just a moment. But what I want to do is sort of answer the question that was asked. I am going to put links in. I started to do it today just before class. When I saw I only had 12 more minutes before you guys stand me up and don't ask a question, uh, I decided I'd just do it tonight. And I do want to put links in for you. And so in order to do this, okay, I'm going to go to my website. This is still on our page. It's up much higher. I hope you have bookmarked it. Okay. This has a lot of information on it. Okay. But although it may make it kind of unwieldy to put all of this on the Canvas page, I can at least keep it over here. And I want you to come to Unit 4, Histology and Organs. Okay. And I want you to go to the very bottom. Oh, I have a problem. You can see what it is. I don't know what you can see. The tag is in my way. I need to press that button. Okay, we got a puzzle. Do you see what I'm doing or having trouble with? Anybody?
I can see the screen.
Yeah, you can see the screen, but can you see the word some practice histology slides at the bottom?
Yes. Yeah, we can see
Yeah,
it.
can you see that there's another line under that?
Yes.
No.
It says more histology slides.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna have to stop sharing for a second. You can read it, but I cannot read it because there's a pop-up in front of it. I'm gonna stop sharing for just a second. Okay, now do you see the word histology?
Yes.
Okay, so that worked. That got that out of the way for me. Okay, some of these slides are better. Okay, this is the glomerulus. Here's the Bowman's capsule right here. Simple squamous. And then the kidney tubules, simple cuboidal. Now, the second slide in the group, and you can make this into a true PowerPoint by pulling on the screen down here. I'm not going to. Go to the next slide, and it's labeled for you. Okay. I will have links up for these. Here's the glomerulus. This is the glomerulus face, Bowman's capsule, and all of these are kidney tubules, simple cuboidal. And again, if it doesn't have any labeling here, it at least labels the slide for you. What do you think that is?
Ureter?
This is coming out towards you like a whole bunch of fingers. Okay. This is villi. Okay, they don't look like the villi where we see the fingers lengthwise. These are cut transversely. This outside layer of epithelium is simple columnar. This is the lamina propria inside. The fact that you see a slide one time and it looks one way, and then it doesn't look the way next slide the same way, isn't unusual. It's the norm. Okay. Now it's misspelled, but labeled for you. This you probably recognize as skin, different color. The dermis down here, dense irregular connective tissue, stratified squamous up above. This is the stratum corneum, just like in the other slide. Here now it has a label. This epithelium has a hairy edge to it. This has got to be pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. And it will be found in the respiratory system. Okay, so there's your answer.
Recording in progress.
Here's transitional epithelium. It's multi-layered thick, but the outer layers are not flat. If that's the case, it's always transitional. The lumen of the structure, probably the ureter, is in here. And as the ureter fills, it pushes back on here and here as the circumference of the ureter increases. Here's your tendon, dense, regular, connective tissue. What you're seeing here right now is nothing that I haven't already shown you, but I have put together some better, I feel anyway, slides for you. There's adipose, looking like dirty soap bubbles. Here's the name. It's a loose connective tissue. Another view of adipose, same. Here's the areolar connective tissue that we found in the loose parts of the body, flexible parts of the skin. A regular connective tissue is a loose connective tissue, and that says so up here. This one wasn't meant to trick you or anything. You look at it for just a moment, forget the colors and such and the Halloween effect, and you do see that it's compact bone. This one was stained differently. I wouldn't use that one myself. There it is in the humerus. There's the one that you're familiar with for compact bone. Connective tissue. This one is, oh well, let it be seen. This is the elastic cartilage. Okay. And depending upon what part of it you're seeing and where it's been taken from, it has a similar look, but still a different look. I talked yesterday to you about olives with pimentos in it. I don't think I mentioned the pimentos, but they might be in there. But it also looks like little gnomes sticking their heads out of a tree. Elastic cartilage is found in the epiglottis and in the ear. This is also elastic cartilage. Not nearly as good, and I don't enjoy it as much, but it's the way it looks. I don't use it on the test. This is hyaline cartilage in here. The hyaline cartilage the cells themselves are in lacuna, little pits. This has a more plasticky look to it. Can be any color. I look at this one and I think, this is slow people that got caught in the lava flow. And I never forget it. You can also think of it as people waiting away from the shore. Red blood cells. Okay, that's not going to bother anybody. Erythrocytes. This one would be a lymphocyte. Complete nuclear occupation and about the size of an erythrocyte, a lymphocyte. Here's the neutrophil that we've seen before for bacterial fighting. Here it is. Here's the monocyte that we saw before that increases in numbers in recurring diseases. Okay, I'm all covered up again down here, so those actually are the best ones. I'll put the rest up. There's the bottom three here if you want to get ahead of me, but I'll put the rest up as links or actual material onto Canvas. Okay. I'm on 722. I'm on tomorrow. So I'm definitely not going to do this until tomorrow, the spinal nerves. So if I do this one today, I'm going to change it to 721. I don't want to have anybody get confused. Okay, now this has at first the respiratory system. You've already seen it. Okay, there is nothing new. This is not new material here. Okay, but it should give you an idea of what could be asked of you. So let's just quickly look at it. And then I have something else at the bottom of the page. Okay, so use the terms that we used: primary bronchus, secondary or lobar bronchus, and tertiary bronchus. Okay, those are the terms that I use with you, and the names of the lung lobes, they never change. We spent some extra time in answering a question on this one: primary bronchus, secondary to a lobe, and then the tertiary bronchi is here. Ending at an alveolus. Now, alveolus is only just one of these small looking domes on this raspberry, if I can call it that. The whole thing is an alveolar sac. An alveolus is just one of these. Okay, female reproductive system. We have more models of this, and quite a few models show up on the exam. I'll be sure that you get to see them all, but here's our first go. Okay, the best place to start the female reproductive system is with the ovary itself. And that's the structure right here. Here's the ovary. That's going to produce hormones, but that's associated with that model I just showed you. It'll also eject ova from mature follicles. And the ova pop out the side, and they could be lost into the abdominal pelvic cavity. You don't want that to happen. If that happens and they get fertilized, then you have a disastrous pregnancy that can result being in the wrong place, usually on the outside of the uterus or on the abdominal wall. So instead, you want something to catch. And this thing that looks like a mitt, okay, this is the os fimbriae, also known as the infundibulum. The os fimbriae captures the ovum. It has long flagella, longer than cilia, hairs that beat and pull the egg into it, and then around and into the oviduct. Some have called this, of course, the fallopian tube. It's also sometimes called the uterine horn by people who can't stop thinking about cats. We're going to call it the oviduct. It's in the oviduct about halfway that fertilization usually occurs. That's a pretty safe spot for it to occur. And then from the oviduct, and you can't see it behind here, the egg is delivered fertilized into the uterus. The inner lining of the uterus is the endometrium. It'll be replaced monthly in a fertile female if pregnancy does not occur. This entire structure is the uterus, and surrounding the endometrium is a muscular wall, just like in the heart. This muscular wall is the myometrium. Fertilization and then finally gestation occurs here in the uterus. During childbirth, the contraction of the myometrium can be intense, of course, and lead to the birth of the child. Child would exit through this point. This is the cervix. The cervix is made of hyaline cartilage. And then the vagina. The vagina has rugae, roughened on the inside. Here's the bladder. It has rugae as well. And here's the urethra. When a woman is pregnant, I'm probably not telling anybody anything they don't know, but the need to urinate seems to increase. Well, why not? Look, this is going to grow and grow right on top of the bladder. Had a woman in one of the classes I used to teach, ornamental native plants. We would go on a walk. We started slow on an easy walk with the whole class. And then we got harder and harder until we were going up to the top of Mount San Jacinto. And by that time, everybody's ready and in shape. Well, this one woman came to me at the first. She said, "I don't know if I'll be able to make the entire class." And I said, "Why not?" She said, "I'm pregnant." Oh, I see that before. Uh, every trip we made, she made, but had to stop and find a bush more frequently. But she actually made it all the way on the hardest hike. I was just afraid she would give birth on the trail. Here's the male reproductive system. There is a little bit more I want to talk to you about on the female system, but I'm going to do it on a different set of slides. Okay, on the male reproductive system, we need to start with the sex organ itself, which is the testes, right here. The testes produce testosterone as well as spermatids. They're contained in a dual pouched scrotum. There are two chambers in the scrotum, right and left side. So if somebody were to get testicular cancer, the chances of it spreading to the other side are almost non-existent. The spermatozoa mature in this structure here. It's the epididymis. Most people find a book and it says it's storage of the spermatids. It's not just storage, it's maturation. When spermatids arrive at the epididymis, they probably are not ready to go. They're not going to be very functional. But when they do, they go through this tube. And I'm looking at this central tube, goes all the way around. This is the ductus deferens. I don't know why they've chosen not to call it vas deferens. We all know the term vasectomy. But ductus deferens is what you'll find on our exam. Okay. Notice how it goes at the pubic crest here into the body. There is a hole there. And on the other side, there's another hole. Yeah, it's bilateral. That's called the inguinal canal. It seems to be one of the hardest ideas to get across to people, especially men. They just can't buy the fact that they've got a hole there. Well, if you ever think of a hernia where small intestine or large intestine or other material pushes through to the outside, okay, and you've got to get it pushed back in and sewn up, that's at the inguinal canal. This cord that contains the ductus deferens and the advancing spermatozoa is called the spermatic cord. There are several components of the spermatic cord. They are on your reproductive system list. I gave you a list, and it's on the on Canvas of items that are going to be covered with the organs. And for the male, it has the components of the spermatic cord. Well, what else would be in the spermatic cord? You know, well, how about a blood vessel, an artery? Sure. How about a vein going the other way? Sure. How about a nerve? Oh, any guy knows there's a nerve. So they got nerve as well. Going along with artery and vein, we better have a lymphatic. So we got that in here too, making up part of the spermatic cord. And we have one more thing, and I've never seen a model that shows it, so we present it, I do anyway, as an idea. The cremaster muscle, sometimes called the cremaster muscle, doesn't matter. It's only seen in print. Nobody ever talks about it. The cremaster muscle is a muscle that attaches right up here at the pubic crest, comes down and attaches to the scrotum. If it gets cold outside, that's not good for the maturation of the spermatozoa. And the cremaster muscle tightens up, contracts, and pulls the scrotum towards the body. If, on the other hand, it gets hot, if it's too hot, the spermatozoa cannot develop either. They cannot develop at body temperature. Why in the world would the so-called, I won't use the word, why in the world would evolution allow the development of an organ that can't live inside of the body? I don't know, but it did. And on a hot day, the cremaster muscle will relax and the scrotum will fall. So it goes up and down. I had first period gym class once, and on cold mornings, and we had to go into the pool. People got out of there, and it's like they had been emasculated. Okay. Now, we'll come up to here. Here's the inguinal canal. What does not go through the inguinal canal? The cremaster muscle does not go through. Has no business inside. Everything else goes in and goes its own direction. On this side, the ductus deferens goes to the posterior of the bladder. This is the bladder. This is a ureter coming from a kidney. And this structure here is the seminal vesicle. Can also be called the seminal gland. It produces a fluid that is added through a duct into the ductus deferens to increase the volume of the semen, to increase the motility of the spermatozoa that are in there as well, and to make the fluid more alkaline. The spermatozoa and the semen are headed, presumably here, to the female reproductive system. But the female reproductive system is acidic to protect it from fungus and bacteria. And that would kill the spermatozoa instantly. So instead, now we have a second situation. Why did it get created like that? Don't know. But the alkalizing fluid that's added sort of neutralizes the acid in the female system, and things are able to take place. Okay, actually we covered quite a bit of different territory today. We covered the autonomic nervous system, a little bit of review on tissues, then more tissues, and then some of the organs. I will put up the links for you for those PowerPoints, and so it's going to make it look like week 7 has become immense, but week 8 is going to be looking pretty immense too, because I'm going to put a lot of practice quizzes and things for you, not extra work to turn in, just more to look at and get an appreciation. I will also show you a PowerPoint presentation used as an actual examination. Okay, so be here for that. Any questions? Okay, tomorrow's little talk on spinal nerves is, I got to say it, I don't, I'm not trying to get a captive audience. I don't need that. You have your recordings and whatever, but it is the toughest thing to get across to people who aren't there. So please try to be there tomorrow. Okay. Well, you're here today, so you did it once. Just do it tomorrow, please, and make it easier for both of us to get those spinal nerves down. Okay, well, I'm going to wait around like I always do and say goodbye to the rest of you.
Bye, Charlie.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
I have a question, Charlie.
Yes.
So like in the reproductive system of like a female, when they're what is it called? Like when females can't have children, it like eggs don't drop, right? And I was just kind of trying to figure out like how it works with like with females and with males, like when they can't have children, the process that occurs.
I understand the concept, but I don't get the question yet.
I guess it's not really related to the topic. I was just thinking about it. So the reasons that females can't have children, is it like the eggs not dropping? And then how does it work for the males?
Okay, for the males, many of the spermatozoa are blanks. They don't have
Okay.
any genetic information. Okay, you have the meiosis going on, but they have no genetic information whatsoever. So
Got it.
that's usually the problem. The other problem is just small sperm count. You have to have a large number in order to be successful. Okay? That also, another thing people look at is how fast are these spermatozoa, or are they lazy? In other words, they don't have much energy. Turns out that the spermatozoa that form female children are the strongest ones. They move much faster. Okay, so, but if they won't move fast, you don't have enough, or they're complete blanks. You're not going anywhere. With the female, for the eggs not dropping, that could be a hormonal problem. That can be, of course, fixed, if you want to call it that, by hormonal therapy. But the problem with that is you can cause so many eggs to drop at once. That what are you going to do with 6 kids? What are you going to do with 7 kids? And is that fair?
Right.
Okay. So that's a personal thing to figure out. And the other thing is when the eggs are induced to be released, if you release most of them, you can send a person into menopause almost right away.
Okay. Thank you. I was volunteering at a fertility clinic, and I was like, I feel kind of dumb. I don't really know what's going on here. I thought it might be useful to.
Well,
I appreciate it.
okay, I'm sure you can get a lot more out of Google than from me, though.
Okay.
You're talking to somebody who was never a father, never wanted to be a father. I knew. That just was not my path. Never going to be.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I'm logged on 2 different devices right now because I had to leave home, but I'll exit the meeting once I'm home too.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlie.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Charlie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Charlie. See you tomorrow.
I think you guys would stay around no matter how long it took to be the last ones out.
You know, a lot of times some people ask questions that I hadn't thought of, but they actually help me to remember the information.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, but.
Yeah. I wish more people would ask questions, but maybe they're getting it. I don't know.
Well, I asked a ton, so.
I know. I appreciate that.
I just understand it. It's sometimes really broad, and it I just need the clarification sometimes. So,
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Charlie.
Bye.
Bye.